My head suddenly began to break, a sharp, burning pain right behind my eyes, quickly spreading and rapidly intensifying. God, it hurt so much. My vision became blurry and my eyes hurt as I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop but unable to focus on it. God, how thirsty I was. My mouth was so dry. Some parts of me were numb, but I couldn't tell which ones. Face? Hand? I wasn't sure. I reached for the beer, but missed and knocked it over. I couldn't comprehend it. It was pointless. And then everything made perfect sense. I felt my brain functions slipping away one by one. I was as sure of this as I was of my own name, Jason Black. Life, being the cruel bitch that it is, often serves us crap sandwiches for lunch, and the perverted crap manages to trick us so much that we always take a bite. Sometimes you get lucky and are content with just a small piece, and sometimes you eat the whole damn thing only to spend years throwing it out of your system. At that moment, I realized that I just ate a whole special sandwich with shit. In an instant, a sharp, intense, burning, white pain arose. I lunged forward, vomited, and fell before everything calmed down and faded to black. There's nothing special about me. I'm slightly above average in looks and intelligence and slightly below average in patience and social skills. I have never been a Navy SEAL or a black belt in any martial art. My short temper and above average but below genius intelligence meant I got into some fistfights as a kid. Too smart to put up with bullshit, but not smart enough to walk away from it. I was never on the honor roll. I never started my own company, won the lottery, worked for the mafia, or opened a secret bank account in the Caymans. I've never stood out, ever. I married a woman who, like me, was nothing special. Katie is attractive, smart, and mostly caring. She is not a walking wet dream, not an outright flirt, and not a slut. She was attractive enough to me in all those ways that I considered important. We met, got married, and had a son. We've had our share of ups and downs, but mostly the scales have balanced. We worked and saved, quarreled and forgave, and raised our son. We have known balance and chaos in equal measure, as only a long-committed couple can. Sometimes we fought for a good reason, and sometimes because one of us was stupid, selfish, or simply stubborn. Sometimes we would argue and find a solution. Often we would quarrel and simply agree to disagree, only to one day quarrel again. And again. I smoke and drink too much, and Katie is a bit self-centered and the epitome of passive-aggressiveness. Katie claims that her passive aggression is a result of my smoking and drinking, and I claim that I drink and smoke because she's so damn passive-aggressive. Round and round, over and over again, but somehow it all worked. Somehow we got along, loved each other, and focused on our son, our relationship, and each other. We were happy. Neither of us played sports regularly, but we were always active and fairly fit. We've always tried to eat healthy, but we've never denied ourselves pizza because we were worried about the saturated fat. Everything in moderation. No one was ever going to write a love story about us. We were in love with each other, but not obsessed with each other. There was never a fire in our bedroom. We did what we liked, as often as we liked to do it. No more and no less. At the beginning of our marriage, we probably had sex 2-3 times a week. But we never did marathons. Once we both reached the finish line, that was the end of it until the next time. Neither of us had much experience before we met, but neither of us were virgins. Her number of previous sexual partners was slightly higher than mine, but it never bothered me. I never had a problem attracting women, but I was picky about who I shared my bed with. It's strange for a young man, I understand, but that's the way I'm built. I had to be attracted to her to get into bed with her, so the fact that my number wasn't higher was a choice, not a circumstance. Like I said, Katie wasn't a slut, so her slightly higher number just didn't matter. We suited each other well, enjoyed each other, and neither of us felt left out. Katie had a very difficult pregnancy and birth with our son John and was left with a lot of scar tissue. He was born weighing just over 10 pounds, which turned out to be a bit much for Katie with her height of 5'3". After that, sex brought some pain, but we managed. After 25 years of marriage, We still made love, but not more than 2 to 3 times a month. Katie was as much of an initiator of sex as I was, and we rarely turned down each other when approached, so I'm sure we had as much sex as each of us wanted. We have always been affectionate to each other, and this has never waned. We still often held hands in public or hugged while watching a movie. We had a lot in common, and a lot of differences. We shared the same values and goals, enjoyed the same music, and although we both enjoyed reading, we never read the same books. Katie hated TV, rarely had the patience to sit through an entire movie, and we often had trouble finding something we both liked. She loved to cook, and although I hated cooking, I didn't mind cleaning. We both loved the outdoors and hiking, but while Katie loved bird watching, I wanted to fish or hike. We were alike where it mattered, and our differences allowed us to express our individuality. It worked. Becoming parents has changed both of us for the better. When our son was born, I became more patient and worked on developing social skills, and Katie became a little less self-centered and tried to be less passive-aggressive when it came to our son. I joined the Scouts with John, and Katie joined the PTA. We all attended church together and made sure John was always active, happy, and loved. Kathy was a disciplinarian, and I gave measured instructions. We taught John hard work and honesty, compassion and loyalty, hope and faith in himself and God, and we were proud of the results. We weren't perfect, but we seemed to function well together. "Mr. Black, can you hear me? Mr. Black?" I slowly looked around the room in search of the voice, trying to lick my dry lips. Where have I been? What the hell is going on? My unfocused gaze settled on something or someone to my right. "Mr. Black, my name is Dr. Taylor. Do you know where you are?" "Brogumth," I muttered in response. There was a break. "Mr. Black, you suffered a stroke, hemorrhagic stroke. You are at Presbyterian Hospital. You understand?" "Grummant, what's happened?" My mouth wasn't working. I nodded in understanding. "Fine. Don't worry about your speech, Mr. Black. It appears that you are suffering from aphasia as a result of the stroke. The right side of your face is damaged. There is a slight sagging. At this time, we cannot determine whether you have other damage or whether your aphasia is due to brain damage or muscle damage to your face. Once you are a little stronger, we will be able to determine the extent and nature of your impairments and make a more complete diagnosis and prognosis. You seem to be able to understand me, so I hope—" The doctor spent a few more minutes talking about the surgery I had undergone to isolate and stop the brain hemorrhage that he believed was the cause of my stroke. I tried to focus my gaze on him. I tried to comprehend what he was telling me. I tried, but I just fell into a deep sleep. A few days later, I woke up to find my son John sitting next to me in the hospital room. I still couldn't focus my eyes enough to see him clearly, but I knew it was John. Father just knows. Noticing that I was looking at him, he took my hand, sniffed, and tried to squeeze out a few words. "Dad, I—" His voice sounded tired, defeated. I simply nodded, squeezed his hand, and looked away. What could be said? The only people I saw were my boss, 2 colleagues, and the hospital staff. 3 days later, John and I were in a Mexican standoff and stared at each other for several minutes. I wasn't happy with him being here, and he was unhappy with a lot of things. "Dad, you are leaving home tomorrow. How the hell are you going to cope alone? Without a doubt, I will be there to help you. You can't drive, you can barely walk. What's your plan?" He was waiting for my decision. "John, I love you. I appreciate you and appreciate your concern, but you just started a new job and shouldn't have to take time off to help me. I'll be okay." Of course, it didn't sound like that at all. I had made progress in developing my speech, but it was still slow, labored, severely slurred, and often barely more than a mumble. John was one of the few people, other than the hospital staff, who could understand the meaning of my inarticulate muttering. "This is not discussed, Dad, because Mom—" He let the thought die on his tongue. "You can't be alone, at least not for long. Who the hell else is going to help you? My boss was very understanding about this, so stop worrying. I can stay with you, work in the office for a few hours less when I need to accompany you, and earn the rest of the time by working remotely from home. Everything will be great." The prognosis was good. In addition to aphasia, I had partial paralysis of my right arm and leg. With a little physical and speech therapy, blood thinners, and lifestyle changes, I could regain most function in my leg and arm and significantly reduce my facial drooping. Dr. Taylor thinks I will walk with a slight limp and the drooping of my face will be subtle. Luckily for me, the aphasia seemed to be directly related to damage to the muscles of the face and mouth. "Okay, John." "Thank you," I muttered, sniffling. "I love you, Dad." I was returning home, or what was left of it. Damn crap. "I love you too, John." There were no warning signs. I didn't know that I was about to lose my wife, and she didn't give me any clues. We had been married a little over 25 years when this happened. Kathy was working as the director of a nonprofit organization, and I was the director of sales in North America for a division of a large international software company. I know. What's a guy with poor social skills doing in sales? The truth is that the worst salespeople are the guys with the gift of gab. They just don't know how to listen. If you want to sell a complex software solution to a Fortune 500 company, you need to be a good listener. The executives at these big companies don't want to be your friends, but they do need to trust you and respect you professionally. They may want to drink beer or play a round of golf with chatterboxes, but they prefer to work on their business matters with listeners. I made great money, and although I was good at what I did, I was always a great salesman. I was never great. Never one of the few guys who made seven-figure commissions. But I have always met or exceeded quota, no matter the economy, and my steady work has earned me my current position and the respect of many colleagues, past and present. I wasn't picky about my team, but I expected you to meet quota most of the time. I've worked with my reps to help them do this, and in all the years I've managed salespeople, I've only had to fire a few people for performance issues. I would say, and have regularly said, that these were hiring mistakes, which often happens in a growing economy, when you have to relax your standards a little to fill open positions. I have always opposed this type of hiring, but senior management has often pushed me towards it. This way, reps can generate a lot of new business while maintaining existing clients. But let's face it, some guys are great hunters, and others are great at farming. The management solved this problem by dividing the territories. I always thought it was short-sighted and lazy. I wanted to separate these two directions. Let the hunters hunt, and the farmers do farming. For years I was told this was unfeasible, unprofitable, and unwise. But that all changed when we moved to a SaaS, software as a service, delivery model. Our licensing moved to subscription, and suddenly farming became hugely important. I was finally able to release my hunters into the wild and plant my farmers on fertile pasture. At first, some of the hunters didn't like the idea of giving up the low-hanging fruit of renewing their subscription. But in the end, they realized that they were getting more pleasure from their work, and with properly adjusted quotas, they still pulled out $250,000 on target. As a result, everyone became happier. I spend most of my time solving other people's problems. I enjoy it. I loved solving problems for my representatives, our clients, and my company. I was almost always able to find a mutually acceptable solution, and this made my job enjoyable. However, there was a lot of stress. You still need to meet your targets. In sales, you can't rest on your laurels. You're only good in the last quarter, which means you're constantly on the move. I've traveled a lot. Every week I was on the road somewhere, sometimes for a night, sometimes for a whole week. It is exhausting and takes a toll on personal relationships, physical and mental health. Hobbies helped me cope with stress, and Katie was very supportive of my career, which also helped reduce the stress I might feel worrying about the state of my home life. I tried damn hard to be available to her and John every weekend, and I mostly succeeded. I was holding sales meetings in the middle of the week, which was a little unusual, but I wanted the start of the week to be free so that we could react to everything that happened over the weekend, and so that my reps had at least a little time to act on, in accordance with any suggestions or corporate directives that we reviewed during the sales meeting. It worked. Sitting in my office going through my mail on a Wednesday afternoon, right after my weekly sales meeting, I picked up a plain white envelope with a Dallas postmark and no return address. It was as unremarkable as anything else, but opening that envelope changed my life, sending it down a new, dangerous path from which I would never fully recover. Oh, Katie. Peter Sellers was a happy little guy, despite his profession. Quite average in appearance and size, which I suppose was an advantage professionally. Our first meeting was short and did not inspire much confidence. He asked a lot of questions that you would expect, but he also asked a lot of questions that seemed damn inappropriate to me. Some of his comments were downright weird, and he was annoyingly cheerful throughout. However, it came highly recommended, and to be honest, I didn't know a damn thing about this type of work. I answered his questions, asked a few questions back, gave him some information he wanted, filled out a few forms, paid him, and that was the end of it. Give me 2 weeks, Mr. Black. Let's agree to meet in 2 weeks or earlier if we manage to complete everything before then. Try to get some sleep. You look dead tired and ready to collapse. I agreed, muttered something about being tired and someone falling over dead and walked away. During our second meeting, a little less than 2 weeks later, Peter Sellers did not strike me as such a happy and strange fellow. God, what a week it's been. We were so busy at the office that I hardly had time to think. I finished my latest project today and was looking forward to a hot bath, good food, and a quiet evening with my husband Jason. We've both been working a little more than usual lately. Our schedules have been messed up, and we probably haven't really communicated in about 2 weeks. I usually don't have to put in as much time as I have lately and can work around Jason's monster schedule, but this project had a tight deadline and Jason seemed even busier than ever. He told me about delivering something that meant reorganizing something that seemed important. Oh, and a new business model, I don't know what, requiring a new measure of success or something like that. Basically, my eyes glazed over a little when Jason talked about his work. I don't understand technology. To me, it's also similar to Charlie Brown's parents. Wah. But, damn it, it made him happy, and I loved him. So I tried to listen and understand. I love my husband. I like to support him and be supported by him. I like our life together and our plans for the future. Jason provided us with an excellent standard of living that would allow us to look forward to an early retirement. We hoped that in the next few years we would be able to enjoy life. Once our son John became independent and our house was paid off, we saved a ton of money. We often just sat with a glass of wine or whiskey for Jason and planned our immediate future. It was all so exciting and accessible that I couldn't help but root for Jason as he worked to make it happen. God, I loved my man. I wanted him to quit smoking and drink less. Combined with the stress he was constantly under, I was worried about his health and our future. He always joked that he would quit smoking when I learned to face the problem head-on. I had a habit of avoiding conflict and dealt with my anger by being passive with Jason. I used sarcasm, for example. I said, just kidding, after telling him off, or expressing my anger covertly by not sharing with him, withholding sex, staying silent, or enjoying his mistakes if I was right about something. I told you. Jason hates this. He solves problems and gets down to business immediately when it arises. He never puts off for later what needs to be resolved and does not shy away from conflicts. On the contrary, he welcomes them as a means of resolution. He says what's on his mind and expects the same from me. Of course, he doesn't understand this, but this is already a woman's prerogative. I knew Jason would be home that evening. I wasn't sure exactly when, since he often worked late, but he didn't mention any trips, so I was sure we could enjoy a nice evening together. On the way home, I stopped to pick up some groceries for dinner and hummed to myself as I drove the last couple of miles. As I pulled up to the house, I was surprised to see Jason's car in the driveway. I tried to remember the last time he was ahead of me, but I couldn't. Well, more time to relax together and reconnect. I parked next to Jason, gathered my groceries, and headed to the front door. Walking into the foyer, I called out to Jason, but was met with silence. Strange, I thought, placing the grocery bags on the kitchen island and calling him by name again. But still, there was no answer. I headed towards our bedroom, thinking that maybe he was in the shower. His jacket was on the bed, but Jason wasn't there. Walking down the hallway to his home office, I opened the door, and at that moment, my whole world collapsed. Speech therapy and physiotherapy procedures were of great benefit. Only 3 months after the stroke, I could already walk and talk. Of course, I didn't sound like a blogger at the radio station, but I could express myself, although with difficulty. John was a constant source of strength and encouragement and helped me push the limits of my physical capabilities. However, he was unhappy, and I knew we needed to finally talk about it. It's time for me to be close to my son. Help him deal with this. John, have you talked to your mother lately? There was a long pause. I liked his intelligence and never rushed him with answers because I knew they were all well thought out. He did not open his mouth until he knew what and how he wanted to say. This always drove Katie a little crazy, but I thought it was a strength of character that should be admired and encouraged. No, Dad, I didn't talk. She emailed me, but I didn't respond. I don't know if I can. I mean, I want to know what happened, but I'm not sure I can forgive her, so... She's your mother, John. She loves you. Maybe by talking to her, you can find a way to keep her in your life, in a way that you can live with. Or maybe not, but if you avoid it, you will only be left with anger and doubt. And this is the kettle calling the pot black. God, Dad, what if I said this to you? John, she married me. She gave birth to you. These are completely different things. Besides, I'm not avoiding her. She knows where I live. For your own sake, try to work through these issues with her. Let her understand how she offended you so that at least you feel better. If you keep it to yourself, it will only hurt you more. I don't know, Dad. Okay, John, let's talk about this over lunch. Tell me what's on your mind, ask questions, throw tantrums. Let's kick this fucking elephant out of the room. I left him for a while and left the room to prepare dinner for Roos. As I mentioned, I hated cooking, so meals these days were always pretty simple, but my new diet required a little work. I made a nice salad and chopped up some apples and pears on the side, as well as some grapes and nuts. After a while, John came into the kitchen and sat down at the table opposite me, eyeing his salad suspiciously. After a few moments of scrutinizing his plate, he picked up a slice of pear and took a bite. I'm proud of you, Dad. You really stick to this diet. Another pause and another slow bite of the pear. And then, in a barely audible whisper, "What happened, Dad?" I sighed. "It will be difficult, but it has to happen." "Well, I was in my home office when I had a stroke. Luckily, your mom found me unconscious shortly after it happened and called 911. I fell silent, looking at the backyard. "I know, Dad, but..." "She left before the ambulance arrived. She didn't go to the hospital." "She didn't come home, Dad. For God's sake, her husband just had a stroke and she left him. When you needed her most, she left you, Dad. What kind of person does that?" "John, she did the right thing at that moment. She was the last person I needed then or need now. She's never dealt with conflict, so her reaction doesn't surprise me." "Shit, Dad, you're having a stroke and need medical attention. Hardly a crisis she should be running from." "A conflict, John, not a crisis. Your mother could not cope with the impending conflict. When she found me at the table, lying unconscious in my own vomit, she realized that the biggest conflict of our lives had just clipped me at the knees and headed towards her. She couldn't come to terms with this fact. She couldn't come to terms with what she had done. It almost killed me, and she couldn't come to terms with it." "You couldn't come to terms with what, Dad? What did she do that could be worse than leaving you like that?" Looking into his serious, pleading face, I took a deep breath, and then I told him. I opened the door to Jason's home office and stared blankly at the sight before me. Oh my God. Jason slumped over the table and lay unconscious in a puddle of vomit. I rushed to his side and noticed that, fortunately, he was still breathing, although his breathing seemed a little labored. Now I was crying uncontrollably, screaming for him to wake up. "Jason!" I shook him, but he refused to wake up. I repositioned his head so that he wasn't lying in his own mess, all the while sobbing and screaming and starting to hyperventilate. "Jason!" I continued to shake him. I knew that stress, his smoking and drinking, would be his undoing. I was so angry at him. "Damn you, Jason! Wake up!" I hit him on the shoulder, screaming and crying. I hugged him. "Jason, please!" I then looked up at his laptop and froze. No, this can't be true. Jason. My name is Jason. My rock, the man I love, collapsed after watching a video of me, like an animal, mating in a cheap motel room with my colleague Chris Peters. I did this to him. My head was spinning. There was a loud buzzing in my ears. I stood there, frozen, watching and listening to my betrayal. My selfish, stupid betrayal. A betrayal that seems to have nearly killed my husband. I don't know exactly how long I stood there, but I know that what I'm most ashamed of is what I did next. Instead of dialing 911 and calling for help for my husband, who was quite possibly dying, I removed the DVD from his laptop and searched his office for further evidence. I found Mr. Sellers' investigator's report, and taking both the report and the DVD from the room, hurried down the corridor. I ran into our bedroom and hastily packed my suitcase, throwing in the DVD and the private investigator's report. After carrying the suitcase downstairs and putting it in the trunk of my car, I went to the kitchen, took out the bags of groceries, and put them in the car. I can't explain why. Returning to the house, I poured myself a drink to calm my nerves. It wasn't until I finished my drink that I finally called 911 to get help for my husband. Who does this? I gave my name and address, answered a few questions about his condition, then disconnected the call, rushed to the car, leaving the front door open, and drove away. I couldn't come to terms with it. When I first returned home from the hospital after my stroke, it became clear that Katie had been in the house and taken her things. It looks like she spent a lot of time going through everything. She took photos, DVDs, CDs, art, kitchen utensils, and her cookbooks. Even the furniture was gone. It was clear that she had moved out. John had a stroke. I did not care. John wanted to wring her neck. I wanted to lie down. Over the next few months, as I went through the agony and humiliation of physical and speech therapy, I reflected on what brought us, here. I haven't heard anything about Katie. John and I never talked about her, and I didn't know if he was still in touch with her or not. I hoped so for his sake, but overall I didn't care. I've discovered that, contrary to what people say, you can absolutely just stop loving someone. More precisely, I unconditionally and immediately realized that I did not love the woman I was now married to. I still loved the woman I married 25 years ago, but she left and was replaced by someone I didn't know. I didn't hate her, and how could I? I didn't even know her. No, I was simply and absolutely indifferent to her. She was simply John's mother. I was glad she didn't stay in the house, that her inability to face conflict or the consequences of her actions caused her to run away. Otherwise, it would be difficult. Who wants to communicate with a complete stranger while they are recovering from a serious illness? Certainly not me. No, it was for the best. I haven't decided yet when I'll take care of my marriage. When Mr. Sellers first contacted me and told me that she was indeed cheating on me, I took the appropriate steps, confident that my actions were correct and that I needed to act immediately. I have already contacted an attorney who has instructed me on the necessary and acceptable steps before filing a claim, and I have begun the process. I asked Mr. Sellers to send copies of his report and DVD to my lawyer, began separating our finances as much as possible, and began removing Kathy as my beneficiary on everything I could think of. Meanwhile, my lawyer was preparing the necessary documents to begin the divorce process. Of course, everything fell apart before the paperwork was even filed, and Katie was even served. I met with Sellers, picked up my copy of his report and the accompanying photographs and DVDs, and went home to review it all. Knowing that your wife is cheating and seeing her cheating have very different consequences for your well-being. We all know that children die in war zones, and this affects us deeply. But seeing children die in a war zone will have a completely different impact. Few people survive it unscathed. Witnessing Katie's betrayal almost killed me. and left me humiliated. Yes, I will divorce Katie. I was sure of this. Reconciliation seemed completely absurd. I mean, no one would ever consciously decide to marry someone they know would cheat on them. So why stay married to the same thing? The only thing I knew about Katie was that she was a cheater and a coward. Oh, and John's mother. Otherwise, she was a complete stranger. No, I was not going to make the decision to grow old with a cowardly cheater. Divorce was my only option, but at the moment, I had more important things to do. I needed to recover and decide what I would do next for myself. I still had some physical progress to make, and I had to decide whether I would return to my stress-filled corporate life or choose a different direction. I was hoping to work another 4 or 5 years and then retire. Perhaps I could afford to retire now, although less comfortably than I had hoped. I may be able to start a new career or reconsider my position within a company to reduce stress and travel. I still didn't know. I started eating better and stopped smoking and drinking, although the doctor told me that a drink or two every now and then would be nice if and when I could get off my current medications. I didn't miss drinking or smoking. Near-death experiences will do that to you. Physiotherapy was good exercise, and I was now walking quite a bit too. No, the only thing I knew for sure was that I would not allow Katie's infidelity to change or destroy me. Instead, I decided that I would use it and its consequences as the motivation I needed to become healthy and happy. It's been 3 years since I found my husband Jason dying because of my selfish stupidity. I haven't spoken to Jason or John since then. John refuses to talk to me, and I'm too embarrassed to try to contact Jason. In the end, he filed for divorce and served me at work. I didn't fight the divorce, and we mostly split everything equally, albeit slightly in Jason's favor. What did I care about? Finally, Jason threatened the organization I worked for with very bad publicity if they didn't take certain actions. Negotiations dragged on, and eventually Chris Peters was fired, and the executive director, my boss, was reprimanded. My career in this organization has stalled. During this process, it turned out that it was Chris who warned Jason about our affair. Chris and his wife had an open marriage that caused them to grow apart over the years. He and I joked that we were work spouses. He was my work husband, and I was his work wife. I never considered this little game dangerous and did not respect the appropriate boundaries. Shortly after our physical affair began, my boss found us together in my office, and we were formally reprimanded. In a subsequent letter to me, she pointed out that office romances, especially between married employees, were strictly against our code of ethics, and as my boss, she should have reprimanded us and advised us to stop the affair. And as my friend, she didn't understand why I wanted to cheat on Jason with Chris, but she understood the appeal of the affair, and if I wanted to continue, please keep it outside the office. That's what we did. This should have been enough to bring me to my senses, but it wasn't. I didn't love Chris, but I liked him. What I really liked was the sex. He was no better than Jason, just smaller. Yes, less. Ever since John was born, sex with Jason had come with its share of pain. He's not a porn star, maybe an average one. Chris was smaller, and that meant that for the first time in years I could have sex without pain. And that was the end for me. Chris began to fall in love with me and often talked about leaving our spouses and being together. I immediately closed this topic. I would never leave Jason. I loved him. I told Chris that although I really liked him, I didn't love him. At the same time, I tried very hard not to mention that I actually liked his small size, but he put pressure on me until I finally admitted. He wasn't happy, not happy at all, and so he hoped that exposing me to Jason would lead to my divorce and hurt me a little for insulting his manhood. He mailed Jason copies of our reprimand and the letter my boss sent me. This led Jason to hire a private investigator, and here we are. Of course, after I found Jason dying and ran away, I couldn't bring myself to continue my affair with Chris. And when I found out that he revealed our affair to Jason, I gave him a big slap in the face and haven't spoken to him since. I have tried to improve my relationship with my son, John, but he refuses to have anything to do with me. He got married about 4 months ago, and I was devastated to only find out after the fact. Not only did he not invite me, but he didn't even tell me about it. I know that running away from Jason hurt John greatly. I think if it was just a matter of infidelity, he and I would still be communicating. It would be tense, and, of course, not as close as before, but nevertheless we would communicate. Escaping from Jason meant that John would not forgive me. I knew he would never get over it, and that is my biggest regret. Of course, I regret cheating on Jason, and I actually dodged a bullet when he lived. I still can't believe I waited all this time to call 911. I still have sleepless nights thinking about it. No, my failure to admit what I did and what it did to Jason ended my relationship with my son. Jason probably expected no less. He knew me well, as good as I am. I knew that my infidelity would end our marriage. I knew Jason couldn't stand it. Oh, he's not an ass. If this had been a drunken one-night stand, he'd probably have been okay with it. This would seriously undermine his faith and trust in me, but it would not destroy our marriage. But a 14-month affair? No. After this, there was no coming back. Jason knew it. I knew it. It was all over between us, and not only did I ruin our marriage, these same actions nearly killed the man I loved. If that weren't enough, my delay in calling 911 might have completed the job that my infidelity didn't finish. After that, I simply didn't have the opportunity to meet Jason, but I didn't try. I'm keeping an eye on him. Well, as best I can. He seems to have mostly recovered from his stroke, thank God, and quit his job. Apparently, after selling our house, he bought a trailer and spends his time traveling between state and national parks, working as a park ambassador of sorts in exchange for some cash and space and hookups for his trailer. I think he has finally quit smoking and drinking. His stressful job is gone, and he is traveling around the country, enjoying all the natural beauty this country has to offer. God, how I wish I could be with him. I'm happy for Jason. I miss him and my son John terribly. I still hope that John and I will be reunited someday, but I pray that Jason never has to see me again. I owe him at least this. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.